France, okay, it's not
Listen,
going to be
look. Let's fuck it. Look, this is a bit awkward. Obviously, you didn't have access to the information that you've got access to now. So,
My excuse is going to be a shitty one, but France is France. In the sense of, like, depending on your neighborhood, I could understand that.
I don't want people to agree with me, no. I'm getting one guide right now. Mr. Geek, hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
Doing good. How about you?
Can't complain. So,
all right.
What's your issue?
My issue is that it's France. It's not like we're in the US where, like, you could suspect him to have a gun or anything. He's a 17-year-old. He has his license, not his full license, sure, but like he's allowed to be on the road. He rented a car with his license, basically. Like I said in chat, there's something called accompanied license, which is something when you start driving, basically, you need to have like
Okay, wait, I don't want you to, because this is very simple to deal with, okay?
Yeah.
Right? He's driving a car. He's already demonstrated he's driving a car recklessly. If that, he could do damage and kill someone with that car potentially. Doesn't matter if he's got a gun or not. He's driving a fucking car and he's driving it recklessly.
What do you call recklessly?
Okay, do you think that running a red light when the police stop you is reckless? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Well, that's what he did before this happened. He ran a red light. The police stopped him previously at a red light, okay, and he ran a red light, and the police had to chase him.
I mean, wait, hold up. You're talking about this case or another?
This case.
They didn't chase him. Like, they stopped him and everything. That was the traffic stop that we saw.
No, I don't know if you've read up on this, but there's actually stuff that happened before that. According to, I believe it was Le Monde. I don't know if anyone's got the article. But basically, previous to that, about 20 minutes before the incident we saw on camera, apparently he was stopped at a traffic light, according to the police, and he sped off. And they also claim that he endangered I believe, a pedestrian and a cyclist in doing so too.
I'm gonna have to check this because I haven't seen anything in France talking about this shit. But even, let's say that it's true. Let's say that how does that justify like the rest of the thing?
It's Le Monde, right? That's a French paper, right? I mean, it's an English reporting version of it. Listen, if this is wrong, I got this from Wikipedia. I got this from Le Monde. I'll link it to you.
No, I believe you. I believe you. It's just that, like, this is something that hasn't been reported. But let's say it's true. Do you think that it justifies putting a gun, like, to someone and everything and acting like this?
If someone is driving recklessly, okay, and they're not listening to instructions and they're presenting a risk to the public, I think it's reasonable to present a weapon in order to try and get someone to comply with your commands, yes.
I don't know. You're too US brain for me. No, for me it doesn't.
Okay, so let me ask you this then, right? The car has been stopped, is just stopping because there's a red light, okay? And the police have basically caught up to him, from what I can tell from this. And they're trying to get him to comply, right? What would you do to prevent the risk of them just driving off when the red light changes? Or what should a police officer do?
Fuck. I'm trying to find info on that.
Oh, sorry. I'll link it to you here. Okay. Okay. Again, if this is wrong, I'll obviously take a big L on it. But this is reporting from Le Monde. I found it from Wikipedia.
No, I believe you. I have the same shit and everything. But
okay.
France, okay, it's not.
Listen, look. Let's fuck it. Look, this is a bit awkward. Obviously, you didn't have access to the information that you.
No.
So.
My excuse is going to be a shitty one, but France is France. In the sense of, like, depending on your neighborhood, I could understand that.
Okay. I mean, for me personally, my view on it is if someone is demonstrating reckless driving, not listening to police commands, that presents a massive risk to the public. And I think that it's reasonable for the police to make an effort to try and get the suspect to, acquiesce to your commands, even if it involves pulling a weapon.
Then in that case, like, pull him out of the car, tase him. Like there's plenty of shit that you can do before reaching for your gun.
I mean, I guess that
It's France.
Sure, but the problem with that is that if you're pointing a weapon at someone, that's not a guarantee that you're going to shoot them, but you're presenting force in order to get them to acquiesce to your commands, right? So in most situations, if someone's pointing a gun at you and saying, do what I say, a police officer going, do what I say, the likelihood is they're going to comply with that. I don't know the exact time frame exactly. It looks like here, there was 4 minutes between them confronting them. Sorry, it looks like it was 8:16 that they kind of roughly pulled him over, and then 8:19 when it crashed. It seems like there was quite a short time frame in the confrontation there at the car. My understanding is it's at a red light, so they're probably concerned about time. I'm not sure if they've got adequate time to really think to maybe put a taser out or try and have something that's less non-lethal. They're probably thinking, I would guess, this guy's driving recklessly, we need to put a stop to this. Let's present lethal force in order to get him to acquiesce to our commands. That's my guess.
Yeah, and I think that if you get a police officer, like, for me, like, the idea of, like, I'm sorry, again, like, if I see a police officer, like, pulling out his gun and saying, I'm going to fucking shoot you in the head, yeah, like, for me, it's not like a police officer, like, making a stop. It's someone who's unhinged with a gun. That's simple. I don't know if I will, like, just stay around and, like, you know.
Okay, but if a police officer did that to you, what would you do?
Speed up. Straight up. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, there's nothing in. Again, it's France. I'm sorry to say that. Like, again, like it's an excuse.
Wait, so
a
police officer pointing a gun at you, saying, I'm going to shoot you in the head, and so you're not going to follow their command. You're going to take an action that's going to increase the likelihood of you getting shot.
If the escalation is like this, yes, because it's not a police officer. It's someone unhinged with a gun.
Okay, I mean,
there needs to be a proper escalation. You cannot, like, if I walk in front of you in the street and you say, "Hey, you don't cross me," and you pull out a gun. Yeah, of course, I'm not going to stay there. Like, there's plenty of shit that would have been possible to stop him. Put your vehicle in front of him and everything. And like in the stop that we're watching, he is stopped.
Yeah, but
he stopped. We agree. It's not a chase. It's not like.
Wait. Yes, he's stopped. And the reason they've got their weapon out is he's still not complying with their commands, from what I can tell from what I've read. And the shot actually happens after he attempts to drive off. The vehicle accelerates to drive off, and that's when he fires the shot.
Yeah, you can hear it in the video, but like he said, like you can hear one of the officers saying, "Yeah, I'm going to shoot you in the head."
But the reason that
if you hear someone say that to you, yeah, you're not going to stick around.
I mean, if a police officer is saying, "I'm going to shoot you in the head," that could be like an excessive presentation of force. But from my perspective, I just do everything I could to keep the situation calm, comply with the commands of the police, and then later you can go to the force and make a complaint if you feel you were dealt with inappropriately. That would surely be the best way to handle that.
You can. I did a thread about this shit, but like basically, like police in France is absolutely unhinged. Like in and outside of protest, when like you have like police stopping you, it's not like law and order. It's just like the gang who won. It's just like the most unhinged people. Like I could tell you like personal story of like my deal with the police, and like yeah, they're just like thugs. So when you get like when I say that, like I could understand in certain circumstances that like burning a red light and not wanting to be arrested, yeah, I can. There are plenty of people. There's like a story of like a 14-year-old who tried to steal a moped and who ended up with like a fractured jaw, like the bone around the eye like fractured, lost like 4 teeth and everything. 14-year-old. What force did he represent?
And sure. So, but you're pointing to one example. So, yeah, you're pointing to one example, which sounds bad, but I think that in totality, if you're looking at these situations, generally the best advice is going to be to comply with the officer's demands to the best of your ability in as calm a way as you can manage. And obviously, if you get beaten up, that's a terrible thing to happen. But then at least you're alive to be able to report it to the authorities, and hopefully it can be investigated. Surely.
If you get someone putting a putting a gun on you, I don't think that like you're going to think, well, I might get beat up. Basically, I think you're going to think like, yeah, I'm going to end up dead.
Sure. I mean, the thing I'd say to that though is this person hadn't complied with requests from that first stop at the traffic light, and they ran a red light to try and get away from them. So, I think that the reason they took these actions wasn't because they were worried about getting shot. The gun didn't come out until later. I think it's because they were trying to escape from the police because they didn't want to get in legal trouble.
I mean, I
Look,
I don't
listen.
know if I buy that
We clearly. Okay. So, why do you think he ran the red light, the first one?
because he was chased by the cop.
Okay. I mean, I believe initially, they tried to conduct a traffic stop, and
Yeah, like they tried to conduct a traffic stop. He didn't want to stop. That's what I mean. Like because he was chased by the cop.
okay, but the police officers have got a legal right to conduct a traffic stop, right? Like, if the police try and stop you, you as a citizen have to comply with a traffic stop from the police.
I, I, yeah, technically, I agree with you on that. But the problem, Friends, like I don't know, like you can say that it's one case, but like add this to all the violence that we've seen during the protest. Add this to like all of the shit that happened. Like recently, when there was the George Floyd thing in the U.S., there was like protest about like someone who died in 2016, like under like police custody, and basically the police try to cover up. There are plenty of stories like this. It's not like isolated incident and everything. When I say that police is the gang who won, that's literally how most people see this shit.
Sure.
Cops like.
But then, if you look at, like, you're talking about bring America into it, which is fine. I don't agree with the invocation of George Floyd necessarily, but we don't have to get into that, okay? But what I'd say is, if you look in America, the advice, there's the talk that they'd speak about where it's kind of discussed how amongst black communities they'll speak to like black children and they'll say, look, if the police stop you, engage calmly, don't provoke, and they'll give them the chat, to make sure that they engage in a way that doesn't increase their chances of having some sort of, invocation of racial bias hurt them because the police have got an itchy trigger finger or something like that, right? So to me, I think that would be the best thing to kind of advise. Yes, there's cases where there's police brutality, and that's obviously wrong. I just don't know if you can use that to justify taking very reckless action and then having a police officer point a gun at you and not complying and driving off.
I
That's
mean,
just
yeah. Like on that, like yeah, we don't have the same dialogue in France. There's nothing related to we don't have like this dialogue about race in France. It's not happening. So yeah, sure, like people should and everything. I agree with you. It should have gone differently, 100%. Shouldn't have fled in the first place and everything.
But notice when you came in, you had no idea that had happened in the first parts of this, right? So do you think that
Uh,
maybe the media is reporting this in a certain way that's giving people bad perceptions of what's happened?
I mean, if you want, but like we can talk also about the fact that the police try to cover it up after and make it seem worse, like on paper.
Mm. Um, I've not looked at the police statement on it. I probably accept that it's likely that the police presented it in a way that made it seem worse than it was on the video. Sure, that's possible. I've not read it yet, but that's certainly a
Oh no,
possibility
they
that might happen.
completely lied, and it's until they completely lied, and it's until like the video was released that like yeah, like basically like fuck the justice system realized that they tried to cover it up to make it sound way worse than it was.
So yeah, from what I understand, and again, I've not read it, but I believe the police officers claim the car was driving towards them, which is
Yeah,
is that what they said?
yeah.
Yeah, because
That
I
there
don't.
was an immediate threat to the police officer.
Well, I mean, I think there's an argument there was an immediate threat to the police officer, no?
How?
Because he was leaning on the hood of the car.
He was then in that case when he drove off. Why the police officer wasn't hurt?
I mean, I'm not saying that it was like a logical decision, like, but in the moment, in his eyes, the car's starting to move. He can feel it moving under him. He's not necessarily got the wide angle vision that we've got to look at it and see that his life is in perhaps less danger. I think that there's an
No,
argument that in the
no,
moment,
I don't believe that. He's
okay,
on the side of the car, leaning over the hood, basically the front window. You cannot tell. He's on the side. He's leaning over. Even if the car speed up like it did, like you cannot say that he was in danger at any point. There was no risk for him to be dragged by the car. There was nothing like that.
I'm just playing it on stream.
Yeah, I know. I've seen the video.
Okay, yeah, sure. I mean, maybe we're just looking at this differently. I could definitely look at this and think, and you know, it could be that in court they look at it and it's not a good enough reason. Maybe he doesn't follow procedure or something like that. Maybe there isn't a good enough reason to pull the trigger. But I can definitely see at least an argument that from his position, the person's not complying with commands. They've already exhibited reckless driving. They've already tried to escape them before. The car's trying to pull away. He's looking at the suspect. The car's moving under him. You know, in the moment, he could possibly feel that way about it, even if from our perspective we see it differently. Like, what's the other? So my thought process is, it's likely that he felt his life was in danger when he pulled the trigger, right? From his perspective. So, what do you
In
think?
that case,
But
in
what?
that case, he shouldn't be a police officer. His life wasn't in danger in any way, shape, or form. He was literally on the side of the car. He wasn't like in front of it. He wasn't like he had like his elbow on the hood. That's it. He removed his elbow. He's fine.
Okay. Sure. I
And on
guess.
top of that, like, okay, I don't want to justify. He ran away from the cop. That's fucked up and everything. Was he representing a danger to anyone before that? Before his first interaction with the cops?
I don't believe so, based on what I've read, unless there's some other thing that we don't know about or I've not seen. But I guess the issue would be that, like, so is he legally allowed to drive this car or not on a part license?
Yeah. Yes, because there were people with him. If the people were adults, which I think they were.
Because, you know, the first time that they stopped him and he drove the red traffic light, the first incident, I guess the police are stopping him to assess that, right? Because he looks quite young, so they probably just want to check and make sure he's qualified and legally able to drive the car, right? So before that happened, I don't know if we've got any commentary or any reporting on what he was or wasn't doing with the car. But I think that the traffic stop is, from what I understand, a legal traffic stop. And I believe they were conducting it just to check he was able to drive the car and had the right licensing and stuff. So it's like, maybe before that it was fine, but the police are conducting what I can tell is a legal traffic stop to check his licensing, and then he runs a red light. So from that point, he's then the issue, right?
Yeah. I mean,
sorry, there's one more point to make as well. Sorry, I don't want to just overload you, but I believe in the statement there was he was driving down a bus lane as well. I believe. I think there was some little bit of reckless driving maybe that caused them to stop him. It was like that combined with his youthfulness that they made him stop.
I would have to read on that. I'm going to take your
Sure.
word for it. When I say this, it's not me like doubting what you say. It's just that.
No, it's fine. Listen, I'm looking at this as well. I'm trying to figure out exactly, you know, what's happening because there's so much misinformation, especially on Twitter. But yeah, this reporting here, which is, you know, it says that they spotted.
Yeah, I got pretty much the same.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So I think that there was like something that made them want to do the traffic stop. And you know, look, it could be they saw a Moroccan lad driving and thought, oh look, there's a Moroccan lad driving. Let's stop him because he could be doing something bad. But I think there's also the argument that a young guy driving, he's driving down a bus lane, you know, that is pretty decent reason to do a traffic stop and just double check everything's as it should be. But.
I mean, yeah. For me, the main point, like the main reason, if you would say anywhere else, well, pretty much anywhere else in the Western world, let's say, to talk about shit we know, that, like you say, like the police stop him and everything, you would say, oh, okay, I understand. in France, I could understand speeding up. I know it sounds fucked up to say and everything. I'm not trying to justify, like, but yeah, that's the main thing.
Okay, Mr. Anyway, let's been a good conversation. But good to speak to you. It's been a while. I hope you're well. Okay.
Yeah, you too. Take
Okay.
care.
I'll catch you later. Bye. Hello.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. How's it going?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I can't complain. What's up? What's going on?
So, I think your take is pretty fucking stupid. So,
Okay.
let me explain why,
Mhm.
and then you're happy to rebuttal. So I've only been following this literally today. So if you have more information for me, please do tell me. But first of all, the video. Okay.
Yep.
He's clearly stood at the side, probably due to some training, right? To stay out of the way. That, in my opinion, I don't think there's any way for him to be injured any way to the point of that fatal like action is justified in killing the driver. If he was rather stood directly in front, like literally in front of the car, how you described earlier as being on the bonnet, right? Like how you'd imagine on a movie with somebody, you know.
I said he's leaning on the bonnet.
Well, first of all, you said leaning on. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So he shoots him, but he stood at the side. Even if he was to yank it to the left and accelerate like he's a rally driver, clearly he's inexperienced, which could, anyway, he wouldn't be able to set off and like yank it to the left. He's clearly trying to get away, not injure the officers, right? So I don't think there's any way that the officer could have been injured, and basically shooting him seems unjustified. So to revamp it earlier, he clearly had intentions of perhaps negotiating. Do you know the context behind how they managed to get him to stop?
Okay, so the way, basically, the
They
reason
got
they
him
got,
to
I mean,
stop.
just before we get to that, I'll just say the reason they got him to stop is because the car had stopped at a red light and they took their opportunity to confront him based on this reporting that I've seen. Okay.
Okay.
In terms of what you're just saying, I mean, the thing is whilst I agree that from this angle we can see things a lot more clearly, I think if you're leaning on the bonnet in the way that he is, and you're pointing a weapon at someone, and they're not listening to your commands, and then you feel them start to drive off, you've got a
So,
split-second decision to make that is
mhm.
potentially your life, and also potentially the life of other people if they're driving recklessly already. So I think in a split decision, it's very difficult to figure out, oh, it's like, is this person going to try and run me over or not? You know, you're going to have to make an instant decision. And all this would have been avoided if he'd have just acquiesced with the police commands as well.
For sure. So, in that way, if you were to rewatch the video again and how the driver sets off, in my opinion, it's not as I described like a rally start, it's very much a paced setting off. And in my opinion, the fact that the driver was able to stop, there's clearly some type of negotiation or willingness to accept the consequences of their actions and be able to.
But what? That doesn't make any sense. If he's willing to accept the consequences, why is he driving off?
Well, I mean, there's two guns pointed at him and they're saying, don't fucking move or you're going to die, right? I mean, anybody in that situation, just as clearly as you're trying to go on the side of the officers in that they feel threatened, which, I mean, if where you've paused the video, he's clearly set himself to closer to the door so he isn't near the wheel well to where he could get, for example, mowed down. There seems to be enough distance
So wait a
between
second. So you're saying that if a police officer's pointing a gun at you, saying "I'm going to shoot you," in the context of you not complying with their demands, you think the correct thing to do is to drive off?
He's a young kid. He'll be terrified.
Do you think that's the optimum move, though? Do you think that's the correct thing
Oh,
to do?
absolutely not. He should have stopped way before even driving through the traffic light, which I mean, I actually Googled it. 1 in 10 drivers don't follow like red lights, etc. Like it's a very common thing, but at the same time, right? He should like all of this could alleviate. He could be alive right now, literally.
Sure. I just think that it's kind of insane to look at this and go, well, you know, he probably felt threatened and that's why he drove off. He disobeyed a direct command from a police officer that had a gun pointed at him and got shot. It's tragic, don't get me wrong. I'm sure this young lad was scared, but, you know, he's demonstrated a pattern of not complying with the police officer's demands. At that time, from what I can tell, he isn't complying with the police officer's demands. The police officer is brandishing this deadly force towards him, telling him to follow his command, and he still doesn't listen. Tells him he's going to shoot him in the head, tries to drive off. I think it's reasonable that from the police officer's perspective, when you're in his view, you know, we see it from a wide angle, but from his perspective, he doesn't know what this guy's going to do. His life potentially is at risk from his perspective. He's not able to analyze it like you are and go, well, the way that he's leaning, he's not in front of the car. You know, and I think in that split second, it's not completely unreasonable that you might make a decision to take a shot for those different factors coming into play.
For sure. I just think that the force was unjustified. I mean, like you said, they are in a situation that neither of us can put ourselves in, but I feel like they wouldn't have positioned themselves where they have, you know, if they thought that they were in danger to where their lives would be threatened. Like, clearly with training, you can see where he's positioned himself to, like, try and negate that possibly happening. But at the same time, was there any reason to... Really, I mean, it's hard to justify it without footage and context and actual evidence, but was there really necessary to, like, draw your weapons and, you know, like, to try and de-escalate the situation? That seems like an excessive force. And then again, to actually action on that when, again, it's really difficult from the footage because it is much clearer, but I don't feel like especially a senior trained officer as well, which was mentioned in the Wikipedia article. It's not a rookie, like, it's a senior trained officer.
I mean, I just think, you know, if someone is driving recklessly, not following police commands, you were allowing that to continue as a police officer. You are just
Absolutely,
massively increasing
yeah.
the chance. So, and from what I can understand, this stop here is because there's a red light ahead. Okay. And my understanding is that when the red light changed, that's when they tried to drive off. So I believe, unless I'm missing something, the only reason the car is stopped here is not because the person is actually complying with the officer's commands at that point. It's because he can't move anywhere because there's a red light. Okay. And I think that is why there's the time sensitivity of pulling a gun out rather than tasering or pulling them out is because, as you know, they're probably concerned as the red light changes, he's going to drive off, which seems to be what happened from what I can tell. So, you know, I just think that the idea that them pulling a gun on someone who is driving recklessly, who is only stopped because there's a red light, who has endangered the lives of others, is not an unreasonable thing to do in that situation. I mean, okay, I guess my question for you would be...
I can understand your side for sure. Like, you know, I'm not trying to sit here and say, you know, you're fucking...
okay, what should... Well, you said my take was really stupid, but we don't have to
well,
go on
I
that,
mean,
okay?
it is stupid, but, you know, you're not stupid wholeheartedly just because of one take, but, you know.
What I would ask you, what do you think should have happened in this situation?
So, do you mean afterwards or the police?
Like, what should the police have done, in your mind?
I watch police chases all the time on Twitch streams, of course. You know, I don't know if you watch Saucy McBossy, but and a lot of the time I notice that the police, when they're, especially in LA, when they're pursuing a reckless driver, more often than not, they will just let them go. Now, is that always the best solution? Of course not. But if they think that there's more risk to the public or de-escalating, the chances of that driver then, you know, slowing down and thinking they've got away and, you know, obviously not causing more danger is potentially a scenario that could have, you know, not cost the life of the driver, but at the same time, would it have cost the life of somebody else? It's really difficult to be able to judge, but given, again, everything that had have happened before this, and if I were them, to have him stop eventually, like,
I mean, look,
that is... Again, I'm not a trained police officer,
no, sure.
you know?
I just feel like your take on this, you're rolling the dice on this person.
It's very lefty. I can understand.
Okay, but like,
from my perspective, I always want to de-escalate.
Sure, but how lefty is it if this car drives off and plows into a mother and a child? Like, you
yeah,
wouldn't want
absolutely.
That to happen,
like, that is a potential thing that could happen as well. I guess I'd have to look at the statistics of it happening, but again, that doesn't come into play when you're making an in the moment decision, right? Which is why I can understand it from your perspective as well. Like, it's a very difficult situation, again, in that moment, even where they're positioned now and stuff. I don't wish it had have got to that point, but my mantra at least is to always try and de-escalate and That's the approach that I'd take, at least.
Okay, yeah. I mean, this is just a kind of, and don't get me wrong. Listen,
We're kind of going in circles.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
get you.
The problem is, I think that you are more willing to kind of roll the dice on someone driving off and causing a bit more risk and more harm. For me, it's not ideal. I don't like the fact a 17-year-old has been killed, but I just think that
Yeah, for sure.
it's a big risk to take. Someone that's young, hasn't followed commands, isn't respecting the authority of the police. It's a big risk to take, and I just don't think I'd
Yeah,
roll
it
the dice
is
in that.
for sure. For sure.
Okay.
The only other thing I have to say about the riots is I wish it wasn't as destructive. For example, I saw the burning of the library. That kind of upset me a bit. Also, them being able to access weapons is completely like I don't understand how something like that can happen. But at the same time, I can understand that the police are equipped with lethal force, and the people in France, like I feel like don't want it to turn like give the police reason to justify lethal force, kind of like they do in America, where it seems more gung ho. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I don't think that like justifies burning down things. But like at the same time, I feel like even the British approach to protesting doesn't get things done. Whereas if the French Revolution, literally, France don't be putting up with shit. You know what I mean? But
yeah, I mean, I don't support. I mean, to focus on this case, the library thing. I've not seen that one. There's a lot of videos on Twitter that are like just not actually from the riots. They're from different times, different contexts. In some cases,
possibly
not as described. So,
like I say, I haven't really. It's just what I've seen. I only started watching today, but yeah.
No, sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. There's definitely unnecessary violence is happening. So it's good to recognize that. Okay. Was there anything else?
Chat.
Good chat.
No,
Thanks for coming on.
it was a good chat actually. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a
All
good
right,
one.
bye. Bye.
You guys want me to go ballistic? Listen, it's nice. Look, it's nice to talk. Listen, it's nice to talk to lefties for once that come on and say stuff like, let the fucking reckless driver go. It's good. I need that. We need more of that. We need more of that, okay? Jesus, that's exactly what we need. You've changed. I haven't really changed that much. I haven't changed at all. Oh, anyway. I'm not depressed, okay? Jesus. No, there's no one left. Everyone's gone. Oh wait, is that Smugbug? Does Smugbug want to come on? Is that Smugbug in stream chat? Wait, what did I see Smugbug? Smugbug was in chat, wasn't he?
I would never be in stream chat.
Oh my god, no way! Look who it is.
How
I
you
don't
doing?
believe it. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good, buddy. Long time no see.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you've come in to wind me up about this, haven't you?
Yeah, not so much. I've changed a little bit. But the first thing I wanted to ask you was what you would change about the situation to make it less likely to happen in the future.
I guess it's tricky for me because I'm thinking what would have stopped this from happening is if the young lad had complied with the commands of the police. So, I'm of the view, the Sam Harris view, that treat the police like fucking killer robots that at any point could malfunction and just kill you. So, if I had a gun in my face from a police officer, I would just do everything they said to the letter of the law, basically. So
okay, I think you're completely right if your only objective is for this individual to not die to the police, right? Like the Sam Harris view is quite an American view, right? Like treat them like a wild animal, do everything they say. That will probably maximize your chance of not dying because your chance of this being the time that the police go too far unprovoked is probably going to be lower than them shooting you if you don't comply, right? I think that's fair.
Okay.
The problem is that I think, and this is why I think the other guy was saying it's France so often without really elaborating on it, is I think there's less of that mentality in France where that level of self-preservation is not as important to them as never allowing the state of like police violence to get to the normalized point that it is in the US. So now, I'm not saying that this kid thought, I'm not going to let the police, hold me down. I'm going to, protest on my own by continuing to drive out. They might have just been scared. They might have been an idiot. They might have been wanting to kill 5, children on a school crossing, 1 mile down the road. But the important part is that France doesn't really want to allow people to be, lethally executed on the street for minor crimes like reckless driving. It's not that minor, like it's dangerous, but it's not a school shooter, right? Like it's
no,
still
no.
be...
Wait, hang on a minute. Sorry, you're misrepresenting.
Sure.
He wasn't killed for just reckless driving. Okay, that wasn't what he was killed for. He was killed because he didn't comply with police commands in a way that arguably the police officer felt his own life or other lives were being put at risk. That's why he was killed, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think the French don't want to normalize that being left up to the police in individual situations, which is a very different way of thinking about it than in America.
But it has to be in some cases because someone could be such a risk that you have to kill them or they're going to hurt someone else.
I agree. There have to be situations where that's the case, but I don't think this was one of them. And I think one of the big reasons why France is pissed off, and I'm not saying the riots are justified, but one of the reasons there has been a lot of like angry people about if this happened in America, I would say this was probably a justified based on like the rules and normalization in America. This is kind of justifiable, right? Like they didn't follow.
Sorry. I just what I hate about these takes is that this series of events, the actual action to shooting, I think probably took place over the course of literally a second to 2 seconds. Okay.
Yeah.
So the police officer feels the car move, sees the car moving, and in 2 seconds makes a decision to fire a shot. Okay. It's easy for us to sit back here and play it backwards, and I can play it 20 times and go, look at this, look at this, look at this. 2 seconds. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. That's 2 seconds. That decision is made so quickly, right? That I feel like you're kind of talking about all the... Sorry,
we're not arguing. We're not arguing about those 2 seconds. I don't blame that cop. I blame the systems that are leading to that cop being in a situation where in a 2-second span, they have to decide whether someone gets headshot or not, right? That's the problem.
Obviously, I'm going to have agreement with the systemic aspects of this, but I just feel like in these conversations, like we should fix the systems that meant that the person through the factors that led to the position into their life to lead them there should have been different. Yes. But like, it doesn't help us deal with or explain what's happening now. Obviously, if I could click my fingers and this person had a different life and weren't in that circumstance to be shot, that'd be great. But is that a useful conversation to have now?
I think it's an important conversation to have when half the people look at this issue and say, "Oh, this was racism. The cops were just like selecting and shooting people and putting them in bad situations like that." And the other half are going, "Look at this dumb kid. Look at this immigrant. Look at this X, Y, or Z who was doing stupid things and got what was coming to them." And I think the actual important conversation is, how do you take the group that has the position of authority over the situation, which is the police, and better create behaviors that result in fewer people dying overall? And that's where I think, like, why wasn't this a taser? Or why didn't they let this car go? You said earlier they could plow into a mother and child, right? Like, if they're demonstrating reckless behavior, there's a greater likelihood that they're going to cause problems literally down the road.
Yes.
But you're just kind of trolley probleming, right? Like, what percentage chance of risk is it acceptable if you shoot someone in the head? A 1 in 10 chance of them killing a mother and child? A 1 in 100? A 1 in 1,000? Like, how do you expect a police officer to make that decision in 3 seconds and trolley problem every instance of someone potentially doing something reckless that potentially cause harm?
Obviously they can't. I don't even know if the police officer is acting. I'm just making a broader argument when people are saying, like, let it go, that there's a risk that's associated with that. I think the police officer was more fearful for their own life based on what was happening. But to me, if you're a police officer, right, and it's a choice between a reckless driver that might mow down my kids or my kids getting mowed down, and it's a fucking 1 in 1,000 chance, shoot that motherfucker in the head. I don't give a fuck if some kid dies, if there's a chance that my kids are going to get fucking run over by them. If they're not just that there's a chance, but they're demonstrating through their actions that there's an enhanced chance of that happening by not following police commands, by driving through a traffic light.
I think that's the mentality that makes American family men like kill people on their doorstep in the US. You know, well, there's a 1 in 100 chance this was someone who could have tried to rob me, so it made sense for me to kill them as soon as they showed up at my doorstep at a weird time of day. Like I don't know. I think that road like takes you down to the point where you can do a lot of justified self-defense killings when the situation probably didn't warrant it, even if it's legally and even potentially morally justified by that framework. I think that's a worse worldview because it just leads to more people dying unnecessarily and tragically. And I'm not blaming the cop, by the way. Like, I don't think the cop is. I wouldn't say the cop is at fault. Like, they're clearly following some kind of procedure. That procedure is the thing that probably needs to change. Whether that's them being outfitted with tasers or having better tools for dealing with a vehicle, which is a deadly weapon, or having a process of letting them go. It's not like, I mean, I don't know the details here, but I imagine dumb kid driving around recklessly, that license plate probably isn't covered, right? That's someone that you can track down later in the day. But I don't think it's worth someone being summarily executed on the road in order to prevent the
wait,
risk
it wasn't
of that
okay.
being
It
more
wasn't a
damage.
summary execution. That's not what a summary execution means. Summary
Okay, I'm
execution means
being hyperbolic there,
okay.
but you know what I mean. Like, I don't think it's worth people. Like, at the end of the day, the same outcome of the death penalty and someone being shot in the street is that someone has died for a crime, right? Now, obviously, they didn't comply, so their crime was not following orders at the barrel of a gun, and that's stupider than someone who would have just gone to court for it. But I can see why people are upset that someone is being killed. You relate the action, right? Reckless driving shouldn't really equal someone dying.
No. People aren't even upset on the facts of the matter. People are upset on the basis of a short clip without the further context of what was happening before the clip was created. So
yeah, I'm not those people. Like, I think again contextually,
you're there's a bit more reasoning in kind of what you're doing here. I just think that you're again, much like the other caller, I feel like you're rolling the dice on this person causing more harm. And I just think, for me personally, I'd rather not take that risk.
Yeah, but you're basically. I mean, and this is probably going to be like an insurmountable difference. But you're basically saying I'd rather guarantee the death of someone doing stupid than risk the death of someone innocent, and that's fair enough. But again,
but not just something stupid. If someone's drunk in the
something
street
stupid
and
that could
shitting
kill someone,
themselves, obviously they shouldn't be killed. But if they're demonstrating behaviour that can be
what I meant.
directly
like,
linked
reckless,
to an action that could lead to the death of like an innocent person, right?
Yeah, but how many instances every single day is someone doing something that could potentially endanger someone else's life? Like, that is such a common thing to some extent. A friend can push their buddy over, and there's a 1% chance that their head smashes into the pavement and they die. Like, it's so hard for us to find a line on what's reasonable where you apply violence to prevent potential violence.
But the difference is, in that example, with the car, you are equipped. A car is a weapon in the wrong hands. Okay. It could be a specific weapon, it could be a negligent weapon, but it's a weapon in the wrong hands. And the damage and harm that you can cause by recklessly driving is so enormous that I just don't think it really compares to, fucking about and pushing your friend in the street.
Yeah, I'm not trying to compare the two in terms of severity. I'm trying to figure out where your line is in terms of how dangerous a behavior is required before you can be killed for it.
Sure. Well, the thing is, though, as well, okay, is we've also got the fact that they're not complying with police commands. If someone doesn't comply with police commands, that also adds an extra level to the risk, because we agree in society that police are the ultimate, they've got the monopoly on violence in order to enforce...
We don't agree on that. That's the thing, right? Especially in France.
Okay, but they literally do. They literally do have a monopoly on violence.
That's true. They have a monopoly on violence.
You might disagree that that's the way it should be. That's fine.
Okay, right.
But what I'm saying is, as society stands at the moment, okay, that's what exists. Sorry, go on.
Okay, let's take a step back from like actual death, right? Have you ever not complied with a system that you thought was stupid?
Yeah, sure, definitely.
Have you ever done that to your own detriment, or have you always prioritized your own, self?
I've probably done it for, for example, in previous jobs, maybe there was some rule that existed, and in order to secure a sale that would benefit me, I went around the rule in order to get the sale on. But long term, maybe that got found out and I got in some trouble for that.
Okay, so would you say that was, if you could go back, would you not do that? Was that short term versus long term thinking, or do you think that was?
But the thing is, if it was any situation, but the thing is, my life isn't at risk. At worst, I might get a fucking slap on the wrist from my boss. Okay. There's a big difference between doing that when a situation where there's like a pretty reasonable benefit versus, you know, the consequence of getting a slap on the wrist versus, you know, doing it where the consequence is you're going to get shot and could die.
Yeah, I agree. There is a difference, and the difference is solely in how much you value your life versus your ideas, right? Like, there are some people who go out and do shit that would put their life at risk for their ideology, and there are some people who would prioritize themselves and their family to not
If
put
that's the
themselves
case
at
and they get
that
shot,
kind of
then that's
risk.
their own fucking fault. You know, it's up to them, isn't it? If they don't want
I
to.
agree. I think. Yeah, I think.
But then why is everyone kicking off about this guy? You're acting like this guy's fucking Martin Luther King dying for his morals. No, he was a fucking reckless joyrider trying to escape from police.
I agree. We're not acting like they're a revolutionary. We're explaining why people aren't wanting to allow the normal state of like police violence to continue in its current state.
But you're acting like this is what this kid is thinking. I think that's completely impossible.
I specifically said that kid could be driving down the road and and their intent was to drive into a school. Right, like I don't care about the kid's individual thoughts. In this case, I've already said the cop was justified in the shooting based on the procedures that they seem to follow, and the kid did not do the thing that would result in them not die, like would give them the greatest chance of living, right? Clearly that was the mistake if their goal was purely self-preservation. What I'm saying is the reason that people aren't happy with this is because they don't want a situation where a dumb kid can make a mistake that ends their life. We generally try to stop that, right? We have laws that stop them getting access to, you know, drugs. We have laws stopping them getting access to all kinds of stupid shit.
But going back to the
right?
question you asked me at the start, the solution here would have been to get it so this lad followed commands. That is the simple, most straightforward way that this could have, you know, prevented this young lad's death.
Ooh, okay. I think this is where we disagree.
Other than that, there are obviously things that you can look at, like systemic issues, changes to the police, perhaps police procedure. Maybe there is an argument for a taser. I don't know enough about the timeline specifically. It seems like it was a very short window of opportunity. Maybe there's stuff like that which we could look at, certainly. And I welcome a thorough investigation by the relevant authorities to see if there was another thing the police could have done. I'm totally fine with that, okay? But my problem is everyone's jumping to conclusions. We've got riots. People are, you know, going on about how this is racist. It just seems like a very insane, you know, thing to jump to based on the facts of what we actually know.
Okay, that's absolutely fair when completely isolated to the situation. But you just said yourself that the thing that would prevent this most is if that kid complied with commands. If France had a society where people complied with the police, that would result in fewer people being harmed. Do we agree on that?
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, I know, to be honest with you, I don't know enough about fucking French society for sure, but I would say in the situations where a police officer is pointing a gun at you, telling you they're going to shoot you, your chances of survival are heightened by complying with that command.
I totally agree. The problem is that people are pretty bad at risk assessments, and there have been plenty of instances with the French police specifically where they go way too far, where they do insane shit. I mean, people have been like fucking penetrated over stuff like this, right? Just while complying. So while they may not be making the best decision from a rational perspective, that, you know, driving off is most likely going to get them killed. I agree that's the wrong move if your only goal is you know, self-preservation. But at the same time, if you want a state where people are complying with the police, you need to have a police that has better standards for not applying violence unnecessarily. So it does just go back to the responsibility on the overall police organization being a more trusted institution so that people don't react badly against the, you know, every time they're asked to comply over something more relatively minor than like a straight up violent situation like this.
The thing is obviously, if there's ways that police can deal with situations that don't result in lethal force being used, that's great. And I accept that. And I obviously think police should do whatever they can to invoke that, right? But what you're doing is you're applying all of this kind of social analysis on this situation, where to me, based on what I've read, it seems like the circumstance is this young lad didn't want to fucking have to fuck with the police and tried to get away from them. Like, I don't know where all this extra analysis is coming from.
I think that's super reasonable, I think, for you to look at a situation where like a kid gets killed by a cop, and that cop is a veteran and following procedure correctly and doing presumably all the right things. And then you can look at that and go, well, clearly it was the like police institution's responsibility, not some dumb kid who's still got their brain half not developed, you know, to make the decisions that avoid that kid dying. We don't let kids smoke. We don't let them take drugs. Like, we try and stop them making decisions that will cause themselves damage. And this is one of those areas where, again, we should be able to have a more trustworthy institution, and children should be able to have a better. I think the UK does a better job of this than France does, frankly. You know, like the UK, they're not perfect, but the UK police, you know, they integrate themselves better in schools. They have like specific conversations and like community outreach, and so people do tend to grow up being a little bit more trustworthy of the police in the UK than they do in France, where they are.
The thing is,
and,
okay,
yeah,
but the problem I've got with this is,
Yeah.
it's all very well to say you do. That's fine if you think that. I mean, I'd probably be inclined to agree. I think British police are generally pretty good on the whole in situations like this. But there's obviously problems with the British police. But on top of that as well, I just don't know how realistic it is to say that in terms of this context, because it's like, well, we can't just apply the British police to the France, right? Like, there's material realities that exist that would mean we can't. That's literally impossible to do. So you know, there's a history of cultural. There's the history of cultural development of labour. You know all this, right? There's loads of shit in France that doesn't exist the same in the UK, so it's not going to be that way. So you know, a French problem requires a French solution in terms of the broader societal conversation. But I think that people are using the idea that this is happening in France to give these weird justifications when, based on what I've read, it seems. I mean, again, you say you agree with me on this, so that it isn't completely unreasonable that the police fired on this kid. But yeah, I mean, I guess what at this point are you actually disagreeing on, or where are we going with this conversation?
I mean, what I'm arguing is that we agree on the 2 seconds and the decisions of that particular cop. What we don't agree on is where the focus should be and where we should actually be talking about how to prevent this from happening in the future. And obviously, partly I'm arguing with you, partly I'm arguing with the 300 people in your chat who are saying the usual crazy shit about how someone got their comeuppance for not following orders. I think in
300,
France,
that's a bit excessive. I don't think there's that. I think it's half my chat saying that, is it?
Yeah, and you've got 600 viewers, so I was just
no. What I mean is, no. I know that's what you're saying. You're saying it's 50%. I'm saying I don't think it's 50% of my viewers. That's saying
fair enough. Okay, yeah, all right, fair enough, fair enough. I mean, I couldn't possibly say the chat tends to go one way. I think there's one added problem in France, which is that France is so anti-authoritarian culturally that has a huge self-selection bias against going into the police for the vast majority of French people, which means I would say that the French police is actually worse because more extreme people tend to end up there compared to places like the UK, where there's a little bit less negative sentiment against the police. There are career paths that focus on like social, you have to get like a sociology degree and things like this to become a cop in the UK. Like the French police is viewed like a gang because the worst French people end up there because there is so much negative sentiment against the police. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy that makes it worse. Like I'm one of those people that thinks there should be more leftist cops, because you're going to be able to do better than a asshole in that position. But it's much worse in France.
The thing is like, I'm not in France. Okay, I don't even fucking like France. I didn't want to go to Paris TwitchCon. I don't know enough about the culture there. I just don't necessarily know what I think about this idea that they're anti-police over there, so therefore it makes sense somewhat that someone would take this action. I think maybe you're focusing on specific instances.
I was saying that one of the reasons that people trust the police in France less is some of those cultural reasons that you were talking about, right? Like there is a difference in the French cultural picture of the police.
Sure. So if people don't trust the police, I agree that's a problem. And I guess that my response to that would be, I do not therefore think it is good to prevent, perpetuate misinformation about this case.
I mean, misinformation is always bad. But then
the problem is specifically in this case, the way it's being discussed, is to completely and utterly, shit on the police officer, even though he's been arrested for the crime, for the manslaughter. Yeah. And then there's this rioting as well, which is, hopefully you agree, is insanely excessive to what's happened and the actual facts of the matter. So it just seems like these things are also not helping. So, presenting the information accurately is going to be an important part of improving that trust as well, surely.
I agree. I think the misguided goal of a lot of the left who are talking about this is, and within France, and a big part of the political motivations for the rioting. Obviously, there's always loads of motivations for rioting outside of a particular issue. It's not like everyone rioted overnight because of George Floyd. There was lots of things going on that led to that.
Floyd reference.
Sorry. Yeah. Is that a problem?
You're just engaging in Floydism, but that's okay.
I'm sorry. I'll never mention George Floyd again. We'll let them turn to ashes in history. The problem that we have is that a lot of the left have this goal of like denormalizing these actions, right? Like they want to make sure that they don't want the cops to be walking around with guns in the same way that again British police often don't walk around armed. So I think part of the goal here is they want to have a massive reaction with the goal of not allowing this behavior to be normalized, and they will use the misinformation to achieve that goal in the same way that most ideologically overwhelmed people will use misinformation to express their desired goal. So it's bad, I agree, but like their aim, I think, is just to make sure that this is never seen as normal to the point that it is in places like the US. So it's a noble goal with a very bad method of getting there, which is leftism in a nutshell, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that for me, maybe it's just that I've taken a different path over this past year, and I'm just a bit bored of talking about systemic stuff. So
I mean,
I probably fundamentally agree that yes, systemic changes need to happen. Make it so the circumstances don't create this situation again. But I guess what I'm taking opposition with is not necessarily that concept, because I agree with it fundamentally. It's the reaction to this, the way people are talking about it, and this kind of cops bad, it's racist, immediate take to all of these situations.
Man, do you not get more bored like every 40 days a new shooting comes out and the discourse is the exact same and we just we do the same cycle every single time, like every time someone gets killed by a cop?
Well, I think,
surely
yeah,
isn't the systemic conversation a bit more interesting than just the specific details of the specific person getting specifically shot by a specific cop?
Well, the reason that I find it interesting is because there's often new details to talk about and to look at, and there's obviously very extreme takes that you can sort of talk about.
But then it's just reality TV at that point, right? It's just.
I mean, yeah. I don't know if you've seen my channel's videos recently, but
I get why you don't talk about the systemic stuff as much. Like, it's not because the thing with the systemic conversation is you're having the same conversation every time. Whereas I guess with the new police details, it's like, ooh, it turns out actually this piece of information was wrong, and the bullet actually came out 0.2 of a second later. So really, it was fully justified from the person to not put their hands up in time. Like, it's just. The actual behaviors and systems driving these situations is always going to have a bigger impact than the actual situations themselves. But I know that part of the fun is digging into the specific, doing investigative journalism on every single individual one.
Wait, I don't listen. That's very lofty. I don't know if I'm doing investigative journalism. I'm just
no. I'm not calling you out. I'm calling out the general cycle of just
No, sure. I mean, it's great to hear you refer to my work as that, but I don't really see myself that way. I just want to make that clear, okay?
Okay, I think your journalistic chops are much higher than most of the rest, Chud. Don't worry.
Thanks.
You should your Pulitzer's in the mail.
Good stuff. Okay, listen, mate. I've got people calling you,
of course,
a child molester in my my community. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are, if they can't think of anything actually correct or relevant, they just call the people they don't like a pedo. I mean, it's the easy thought terminating cliche, no?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
No,
I don't know what you expected.
Well,
it's probably the Balenciaga shit. I mean, it's very easy to just you were
probably the dildos for 14-year-old sex education lesson. There's probably another one too, I'd say.
I mean, didn't your teacher put a condom on a dildo in class, or did they use a banana? Is the banana?
I think it was a piece of fruit, to be honest with you. But
okay,
anyway,
all right. Well,
look,
it was that's fruitier. That's more gay than using the dildo.
We don't need to open that kind of worms. I guess I just do want to find out, despite the fact that there are some people that think very bad things about you. I've always enjoyed talking to you, even though you annoy me sometimes.
Of course.
And are you back?
Spicy chat unconditionally.
Okay, that's good. Are you back? What's the deal?
Yeah, I'm working on some stuff. Obviously, I've got to rebrand to avoid legal threats that your spicy chat caused. Fucking hold on. There was a protest group of 50 people that went down to the Bravest Warrior offices, and from your spicy chat, organized to get me fucking dunked by their lawyers. All right.
What? You're memeing, right? What are you talking about?
Yeah. No, I'm memeing.
Oh my god! I was like, wait, what?
Actually,
I hear stuff, and I'm like, what?
Sorry, no. I think who's that person? Someone mentioned to me that Hannah actually knew the true story behind what happened to me. So maybe ask them if you want some fun info. Apparently
I believe there's a notorious community member known as Stylo.
Oh.
Okay, and I think they take credit for reporting your channel or DMCAing you.
They're just clout chasing. They don't have the ability to affect the world.
Okay, damn, brutal. Okay, well, listen.
What do you say?
Hopefully, you know, if there's an ad hoc panel or something, you hop on again soon. It's always a pleasure. Okay.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, DK told me that panels are for chumps, so maybe not.
Okay. Well, my panels aren't. My panels are always based.
Oh, of course, you're right. Okay. Only when I'm
Okay.
there. Bye.
Okay. Well, have a good one. I'll see you later.